Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive.
Good to be here.
Today we're getting into something pretty important where uh, modern wellness tech meets critical medical devices.
Ah, you mean electrical stimulation and pacemakers?
Exactly. Electrical stimulation devices, are they actually safe for people who have pacemakers, or those implantable cardioverter defibrillators, ICDs?
It's a huge question. I mean, these implanted devices are life-sustaining, regulating heart rhythm.
Right, and bringing external electrical pulses into the mix. Well, you can see how that could potentially cause problems, interference.
Definitely, not just theoretical risk.
And our starting point for this discussion is a really helpful summary we came across. It's on the Oriems Fit Research Digest blog.
Ah, yes, I saw that. They do a good job.
They really do. If you haven't checked out their blog, their whole thing is basically taking solid peer-reviewed research and, breaking it down.
Making it accessible.
Yeah, reliable, easy to grasp insights so you can make better decisions about health stuff. They sort of cut through the scientific jargon, which honestly is what we try to do here too.
It's a needed service, bridging that gap between dense studies and what people actually need to know.
Totally. So the big question we're diving into, using your summary as a guide, is can things like EMS units or 10S machines actually, mess with these vital heart implants?
And importantly, does the location on the body matter? That's what the research seems to hint at.
Right. Let's get into it.
Okay, so the research itself, the core paper here, is what's called a systematic review.
Meaning they looked at a bunch of existing studies.
Exactly. Pulled together the data from previous work. The paper's title is The Safety of Electrical Stimulation in Patients with Pacemakers and Implantable Cardioverter Defibrillators.
Sounds pretty direct. And who did this review?
It was a team effort. Authors James Badger, Paul Taylor, and Ian Swain. They published it back in 2017. They were working with researchers from the Salisbury NHS Foundation Trust and also Oddstock Medical Limited, both in the UK.
Salisbury NHS?
Yeah.
They've got a background in rehabilitation tech, don't they? Assistive devices and that kind of thing.
They do, yeah. So they're right at that crossroads of medical implants and therapies like electrical stimulation. It gives them a practical perspective.
Makes sense. And funding. Was it independent?
Good question. They noted funding from the University of Southampton National Institute of Health Research Academic Foundation Program. And they specifically mentioned this helped ensure, an unbiased look at the evidence.
Okay, good to know. So a systematic review. How did they actually do it? What did they look at?
Well, they cast a really wide net, literature-wise. Searched databases from 1966 right up to 2016.
Oh, 50 years of research.
Yeah. They were specifically hunting for safety studies and also case reports.
Oh.
Any instances where electrical stimulation was used on patients who already had pacemakers or ICDs.
And what were they looking for in those studies?
The key thing was electromagnetic interference, EMI. Basically, does the electrical stimulation device cause problems for the heart device?
Okay.
They sifted through everything and ended up focusing on 18 studies that had the kind of safety data they needed.
18 studies over 50 years. Seems like a decent pool to draw from. And the core puzzle was just, how does ES, whether it's FES, NMES, 10NS, whatever, how does it affect someone with one of these implants?
That's the crux of it. And the primary danger, the thing everyone worries about, is that electromagnetic interference.
Right, the EMI.
Yeah. The fear is that the pulses from the stimulator could, confuse the pacemaker or ICD, make it misread the heart's own signals, or maybe not deliver therapy when needed or deliver it when not needed.
Which could lead to malfunction.
Exactly. And a malfunction in a heart device. Well, that's obviously serious business.
Very serious. Okay, So they reviewed all this data, 5 decades worth. What did they actually conclude? What's the big picture here?
This is probably the most crucial part. The review found a really interesting distinction based on location.
Location on the body.
Precisely. The main positive finding, or maybe the most reassuring one, was that when electrical stimulation was applied to the lower limbs, think legs, feet, there seemed to be a lower risk of it interfering with the pacemakers, or ICDs.
Okay, so lower limbs, like if someone's using functional electrical stimulation, maybe for drop foot, that specific application might be less risky?
That's what the evidence they reviewed suggested, yeah. Several of the safety studies they included looked specifically at stimulating muscles in the thigh or knee, or using FES for drop foot.
And those studies were generally okay?
Generally, yes. They typically reported no EMI, no adverse events related to the heart device in those lower limb applications. It points towards, potentially lower risk down there.
But I sense a but coming.
Well, yes. There's definitely another side of this coin. The review was quite clear on this point, too.
What about stimulating other parts of the body?
That's where the significant caution comes in. The review flagged that electrical stimulation applied above the lower limbs seemed more likely to cause interference with the pacemaker or ICD function.
More likely. Okay.
Okay.
What kind of interference are we talking about? Did the case studies give examples?
They did. When they looked at case reports where stimulation was applied closer to the implant, like the torso, upper arms, shoulder, even the lower or mid-back.
Closer to the chest, basically.
Right. In those cases, they found documented instances of problems, actual problems.
Like what?
Things like inappropriate shocks from an ICD, the device firing when there wasn't a dangerous heart rhythm.
Ouch. Yeah, that's not good.
Not good at all. Or, for pacemakers, they saw instances of inhibition. That means the pacemaker temporarily stopped pacing the heart because it was confused by the external signals.
Which could cause the heart rate to drop too low.
Bradycardia.
Exactly. Which could lead to symptoms like dizziness, lightheadedness, or potentially worse outcomes. Wow. So just stimulating a muscle in your shoulder or back, based on these reports, could trick your life-saving device into doing the wrong thing. That's a pretty stark difference compared to the lower limb findings.
It really is. It highlights that where you apply the stimulation isn't just some minor detail. According to this review, it seems to be a major factor influencing the risk.
Okay, so the big takeaway seems clear. Location really, really matters. Lower limbs appear less risky, but anywhere above that line, more caution needed. Why is knowing this so critical for listeners? How does it help?
Well, think about why people use electrical stimulation. It can be genuinely helpful, right? For strengthening weak muscles, maybe helping with movement if mobility is limited, sometimes pain relief like with TNS units.
Sure, lots of potential benefits for certain conditions.
And often, the very people who might benefit from ES for muscle weakness or mobility might also be the people who have heart conditions requiring a pacemaker or an ICD. There's overlap there.
Right, that makes sense.
So this research is vital because it tells us, okay, ES might still be useful, especially, it seems, for lower limb issues. But, and it's a big but, you absolutely cannot just casually use these devices if you have an implanted cardiac device.
It really drives home the risk.
Yeah, it highlights this very real and apparently location-dependent risk.
So it's not saying never use ES, but it's definitely saying extreme caution required,
Yeah.
especially depending on where. How does knowing the location risk specifically help, say, in a clinical setting?
It fundamentally shapes the conversation between a patient and their doctor or cardiologist. It underscores that you absolutely need careful, professional medical advice and likely monitoring if ES is even being considered.
Monitoring the heart device itself.
Yes, monitoring the pacemaker or ICD, especially when starting ES, to actively check for interference. Knowing the higher risk is associated with areas above the legs helps guide everyone involved. It tells practitioners where not to stimulate or reinforces just how critical that close monitoring is if stimulation is attempted anywhere near the torso.
That makes the research finding much more practical. It's not just theory. It directly informs how cautiously doctors and patients need to approach this.
Exactly.
Now, systematic reviews are great, but they often have limitations, don't they? Did the authors point out any caveats with their own review?
They did, yes. And it's important to understand those. A key one they mentioned was that because they were looking back at a mix of different studies and individual case reports, they couldn't actually calculate a precise number for the risk. They couldn't say, your odds of interference are X% if you stimulate your shoulder.
Ah, okay. So they identified the risk and where it seems higher, but couldn't put an exact probability on it for, say, the average user.
Precisely. And part of the reason for that was the nature of the original studies they reviewed.
How so?
Well, many of those studies had pretty small numbers of participants. And maybe even more significantly, the type of electrical stimulation used varied a lot. Different devices, different settings, frequency, intensity, pulse duration.
Right. And how they measure outcomes probably vary too. And treatment times.
Exactly. All those variables make it really tough to just lump all the results together and get one single definitive risk statistic. It's kind of like comparing apples and oranges in a way.
Yeah, I can see how that would be difficult.
Yeah.
So given those limitations, what did the authors conclude needed to happen next?
Their conclusion was pretty clear. To really pin down the exact level of risk and develop firm guidelines, we need a large, properly designed, long-term safety study.
One that focuses on specific types of ES, specific protocols.
Yes, and follows a large group of patients over time. And until that kind of research gets done,
The message is still, Be careful.
Very careful. They explicitly state that until we have that definitive study, electrical stimulation should only be used with significant caution in anyone with a pacemaker or ICD.
And they recommended monitoring.
Yes, they strongly recommended monitoring the pacemaker or ICD function for any signs of EMI, especially when ES is first initiated for a patient.
That seems like a very sensible, responsible conclusion based on the data they had. Okay, let's bring this back home for the listener. If you, or maybe someone you care about, is using an electrical stimulation device for muscle recovery, pain, whatever, and you also have a pacemaker or ICD, this research is clearly super relevant.
Absolutely critical. It shifts the thinking from a simple yes-no to a much more nuanced understanding. Okay, where are you using it? Because the risk profile seems to change based on location, according to this review.
And it's interesting, we mentioned Oriems Fit earlier, the folks whose blogs summarize this study. Their own approach, looking at their product information, seems to align perfectly with this cautious message. They offer various wellness devices, EMS units, massage guns, designed to be easy to use at home.
But the key is their safety advice.
Exactly. If you look at their disclaimers, they're really explicit. They state very clearly, do not use Oriems Fit devices without first consulting your doctor, IUCA. And then they list conditions, including having a pacemaker, ICD, or any implanted electronic device.
Or other cardiac or neurological issues that could be affected.
Right. And they explain why, because electrical stimulation might cause interference. It could impact how those medical devices work, potentially causing health risks.
Which is exactly what this systematic review highlighted, especially for stimulation above the lower limbs. It shows they're paying attention to the science and communicating that potential danger responsibly.
It really does. It feels like their commitment to safety, which you see in how they present research on their blog, carries through to their product guidance. And that Oriems Fit Research Digest blog itself, it's a good resource.
Yeah, they do a nice job making science understandable.
And importantly, they always seem to link back to the original studies. So you can go check the source yourself if you want to dig deeper, which is always a good sign. Builds trust.
Transparency is key with this kind of health information.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. The bottom line from this deep dive into the research seems to be, electrical stimulation can have benefits, but if you have a pacemaker or ICD, safety is paramount and heavily depends on where you use the device.
That's the core message. Lower limb stimulation appeared less risky in the studies they reviewed, but stimulation anywhere above the lower limbs was linked to potential interference and adverse events.
Which means extreme caution is needed, and talking to your doctor first isn't just recommended, it's essential. No exceptions.
Absolutely. Mandatory consultation and likely ongoing monitoring if ES is used at all.
And that brings us to maybe a final thought to leave listeners with. Even with this valuable review pointing strongly to location as a key factor, we still don't have that precise numerical risk figure. How likely is interference with device X used on location Y in patient Z? That exact calculation isn't there yet.
Which just underscores why the authors called for more research. We need those larger prospective studies to really nail down the specifics and give even clearer guidance to patients and doctors navigating this.
Definitely an area where more science is needed. So if you want to read the summary of this study that we discussed and get the link to the actual research paper, you can find it on the Oriems Fit Research Digest blog.
It's worth a look if this topic affects you.
Absolutely. A great place to get more science-backed info on wellness tech and recovery.
Stay informed, stay safe.
Let us know your thoughts on this topic. We're always interested to hear from you. And please do subscribe so you catch our next deep dive.
Until next time.